My mother told me to stop visiting my dad in the hospital. Now I know she was hiding the fact that he changed his will without her knowing. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and what I'm about to share feels like it could have been ripped straight out of a movie. When my dad got sick last year, my mom suddenly became different. Controlling. Possessive. She decided who could see him, when, and for how long. At first, I thought it was stress. She'd always been dramatic, but this was another level. Then one day, when I showed up at the hospital, she stopped me at the door. "He's too tired to see you," she snapped, blocking my way. I tried to argue, but she stood firm. I left, heartbroken, convinced maybe she was right, maybe he really was too weak. But deep down, something felt wrong. My dad and I were close. He would have wanted me there. So the next day, I came back at a different time, hoping to catch him when she wasn't around. And that's when I saw him, awake, alert, and shocked that I hadn't been visiting. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice weak but clear. "I've been waiting for you." That's when it hit me, my mom had been lying to both of us. Over the next few visits, I pieced together the truth. She hadn't just been keeping me away, she'd been controlling his visitors entirely, hiding certain letters, intercepting phone calls. She wanted him isolated. And then one afternoon, as I sat by his bed, Dad whispered something that made my blood run cold. "I changed my will, sweetheart. Don't tell your mother. She'll lose her mind." At that moment, I understood everything. My mom wasn't just being overprotective. She was trying to stop me from finding out that Dad had secretly rewritten his will, without her knowledge. And I had no idea yet how explosive that decision would be. The moment Dad whispered those words, my entire world tilted. I sat there frozen, clutching his hand, trying to process what he'd just said. "You changed your will?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He gave me the faintest smile. "Yes. I needed to. Your mother, she can't be trusted with everything. I've seen the way she talks to you. I've seen the way she talks about money. She'd waste it all, or worse, use it against you." I swallowed hard. "So what did you do?" He glanced toward the door like he was afraid she'd storm in at any second. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I left the house to you. The savings too. She'll have her pension, she'll survive. But you, this way, you'll have something stable. A future. Promise me you won't let her bully you out of it." Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to argue, to say I didn't want him to worry about money when he was fighting for his life. But deep down, I knew he was right. My mother had always been unpredictable. Controlling, manipulative. She loved power more than she loved people. That night, I went home shaking. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words over and over. "I changed my will. Don't tell your mother." It all clicked. That's why she'd been blocking me from visiting. She knew, or at least suspected, that Dad had changed something. And she was terrified I'd find out. The next day, I arrived at the hospital early. Too early for her to be there yet. Dad was awake again, and this time he had a manila envelope on his bedside table. He slid it toward me with trembling fingers. "Keep this safe. If she finds it, she'll destroy it." I hesitated. "Dad, are you sure?" "Yes," he cut me off, his voice suddenly firm. "This is my decision. I don't want her controlling you anymore." I slipped the envelope into my bag, my hands shaking. But just as I was zipping it closed, the door burst open. My mother stood there, eyes narrowing the instant she saw me near his bed. "What are you doing here so early?" she demanded. I froze, my heart pounding. "Just visiting." Her gaze flicked to my bag. For a moment, I thought she was going to snatch it from me right there. But instead she forced a smile and said, "Well, don't tire him out. He needs rest." I left quickly, clutching the bag like my life depended on it. When I got home and finally opened the envelope, my breath caught. Inside was the updated will, notarized and legal. It left the house and the savings account directly to me, with only a small stipend set aside for my mother. Dad had even written a letter explaining why, to my daughter, "You've been the only one I can rely on. I know this will anger your mother, but I need you to understand this is not about punishment. It's about trust. Use this gift wisely and never let anyone take it from you." My hand shook as I read it. I felt honored, but also terrified, because I knew exactly how my mother would react if she discovered this. And she was already suspicious. That evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her smile was tight, her voice sharp. "What did your father say to you today?" I lied through my teeth. "Nothing much. Just small talk." But I could see it in her eyes, she didn't believe me. And I realized then that the real battle hadn't even started yet. Because Mom wasn't just going to sit back and let this go. She was going to fight. And she'd stop at nothing to bury the truth. From the moment my mother narrowed her eyes at me in that kitchen, I knew she'd sensed something had shifted. She was too sharp, too suspicious by nature to ignore the tiniest change in tone, in posture, in silence. I'd lied and said Dad hadn't told me anything important, but she read me like an open book. And when my mother suspected something, she never let it go. The following days became a living nightmare. Every time I visited Dad at the hospital, she suddenly showed up minutes later, as if she had someone watching me. She hovered over my conversations with him, interrupting constantly, answering questions meant for him, or pretending he was too tired to respond. I couldn't get a single private word in without her appearing out of thin air like a shadow. At home, her paranoia deepened. She started going through my room, poorly, because she never admitted it outright, but I could tell. Drawers slightly misaligned. My bag unzipped when I hadn't touched it. Even my laptop left with the screen tilted at a different angle than I'd left it. She was looking for something. I realized with icy certainty, she knew Dad had changed something. She just didn't know what. And if she found that envelope, it would be gone. So I hid it. Not under my mattress or in my closet, that would be too obvious. I took the will, sealed it in a folder, and drove to my best friend Lily's house late at night. I handed it to her and said, "Whatever happens, keep this safe. Don't tell anyone you have it, not even your boyfriend. Please." Lily looked at me wide-eyed. "What is it?" "My dad's real will," I whispered. "And if my mom finds out, she'll destroy it." Her mouth fell open. "Oh my God." She hugged me tight. "Don't worry. I'll keep it safe." For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. But back at home, the tension escalated. Mom's questions became sharper. "Did your father say anything unusual to you? You weren't looking through his papers, were you? You know he's not in the right state of mind to make decisions, right?" I deflected as best I could, but she wasn't buying it. One night, over dinner, she set down her fork and stared straight at me. "If your father has been saying things to you, don't take them seriously. He's confused. Sick people say all sorts of nonsense." I clenched my fists under the table. "He's not confused. He knows exactly what he's saying." Her face hardened. "You think you know him better than I do? I've been married to that man for 30 years. He would never go behind my back." But he had. And I knew the day she found out would be the day the gloves came off. The breaking point came one afternoon when I arrived at the hospital and found my mother already there, sitting at Dad's bedside with a fake smile plastered on her face. She was holding his hand, speaking loudly enough for me to hear as I walked in. "And of course, we'll make sure the house stays in the family, just like we planned," she said, glancing at me as if daring me to argue. Dad turned his head toward me, his expression pained. His lips parted, but before he could say anything, Mom snapped, "Don't tire yourself out, honey. Just rest." I stepped closer. "Dad, is that really what you want?" Mom shot me a glare that could have killed. "He doesn't need these questions right now." But Dad shook his head weakly. "No, she should know." Mom leaned over him, practically hissing. "Stop. You're confused. You're not thinking clearly. That was it. I lost my temper. He's not confused, Mom. He's sick, not senile. Stop putting words in his mouth. The room went silent except for the beep of the heart monitor. My mother straightened slowly, her eyes blazing. You don't know what you're talking about. And if you keep this up, I'll make sure you're banned from visiting. My stomach dropped. You can't do that. Her lips curled into a cold smile. Watch me. I realized in that moment just how far she was willing to go. She wasn't just trying to hide the truth, she was ready to erase me completely if that's what it took to control everything. That night, I sat in my car outside the hospital, shaking, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my dad's voice, for the truth he wanted to leave behind. And I knew my mother was gearing up for war. After that confrontation at the hospital, things escalated fast. My mother had always been manipulative, but now it was like she'd flipped a switch. I wasn't just her daughter anymore, I was her enemy. And she was going to use every trick she had to isolate me, discredit me, and bury the truth. The first blow came from family. My uncle called me out of nowhere, his voice clipped and judgmental. Your mother tells me you've been upsetting your dad at the hospital. Asking him loaded questions, stressing him out. What the hell are you thinking? I nearly dropped the phone. Are you serious? I'm not upsetting him, I'm trying to talk to him before it's too late. She's the one shutting him down, refusing to let him speak. But my uncle didn't want to hear it. He's fragile. If she says you're upsetting him, then back off. Don't make this harder than it already is. I hung up, shaking with rage. That was her move, get to the family first, twist the story, make me look like the unstable one. Then came the hospital staff. When I showed up the next morning, the nurse at the desk gave me an apologetic look. I'm sorry, but your mother has requested that your visits be limited. She says your father needs rest. My chest tightened. She can't just decide that. I'm his daughter. The nurse shrugged helplessly. She's his spouse. Unless your father states otherwise, she has authority. I wanted to scream. She was building a wall around him brick by brick, and I was on the outside. The only thing keeping me from falling apart was the envelope hidden safely at Lily's house. The will. Dad's letter. The proof. At least she couldn't touch that. But she didn't need to find the envelope to do damage. She started planting seeds of doubt everywhere. Friends of the family began calling me, telling me Mom was worried about my behavior. She told them I was fixated on money, that I was pressuring Dad about inheritance while he was on his deathbed. The hypocrisy made me sick. She was the one obsessed with control, and yet somehow she was painting me as the greedy one. One night, I confronted her at home. I couldn't take the whispers anymore. Why are you telling everyone I'm stressing Dad out? I demanded. She didn't even flinch. She poured herself a glass of wine, calm as ever, and said, because you are. You're filling his head with nonsense when he needs peace. I slammed my hand on the counter. The only nonsense is you pretending he hasn't made his own choices. You're trying to erase his voice. That's abuse. Her smile was ice cold. Call it whatever you like. At the end of the day, I'm his wife. People will believe me over you. Always. I realized then she wasn't just fighting me, she was certain she'd already won. But then something unexpected happened. A few days later, while I was sneaking in a visit early in the morning, Dad's doctor pulled me aside. Listen, he said quietly, I know there's tension between you and your mother. But your father is still lucid. He's made it clear in private conversations that he wants you involved. Legally, I can't override your mother's requests unless he puts it in writing. But, don't give up. He's stronger than she thinks. That gave me hope. Maybe she had the family. Maybe she had the hospital staff wrapped around her finger. But Dad still had a voice. And if I could help him get it heard, her entire plan would collapse. When I walked into his room, he looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, "Did you hide it?" "Yes," I said, squeezing his hand. "It's safe." He exhaled, relief washing over his face. "Good. Then promise me this: when I'm gone, don't let her twist my legacy. Don't let her take what I meant for you." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I promise." But deep down, I knew keeping that promise was going to mean going to war with my own mother. And judging by the way she was closing in on me from every angle, that war was already here. The day my father died, I felt like the air had been sucked out of my chest. He passed quietly, in his sleep, while my mother sat by his side. I wasn't there. She hadn't called me until hours later, her voice flat, as if she were telling me the weather. "Your father's gone. The funeral is on Saturday. Don't make a scene." Those words burned in me. Not grief, though grief was there, too, but rage. Rage that she thought she could keep controlling him, even in death. At the funeral, she played the grieving widow perfectly, shaking hands, weeping on relatives' shoulders, talking about how devoted she and Dad had been. I stood quietly, holding back everything I wanted to scream. Because in my bag was the envelope. The will. The letter. The truth he'd trusted me with. I waited. I let her bask in her performance. And then, 2 weeks later, when the lawyer called us both in for the official reading of the will, I knew the moment had come. We sat in that oak-paneled office, the air thick with tension. My mother crossed her legs and folded her hands primly, already smiling like she knew the outcome. She expected everything to be hers: the house, the savings, Dad's entire legacy. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read. At first, my mother's smile stayed steady. But when he got to the key paragraph, the one leaving the house and the savings to me, with only a stipend for her, the color drained from her face. "That's not right," she blurted out, her voice shaking. "That can't be right. This must be a mistake." "It's not a mistake," the lawyer said calmly. "Your husband signed this will. It was notarized. It is legally binding." She shot to her feet, trembling with fury. He wasn't in his right mind. He didn't know what he was doing. She jabbed a finger at me, she manipulated him. I pulled the letter from my bag and slid it across the desk. "No, Mom. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he explained why." The lawyer picked it up, cleared his throat, and read aloud, "To my daughter, you have been my anchor. I trust you to care for what I built. Your mother will be angry, but this is not about punishment, it's about trust." The silence in that office was suffocating. My mother collapsed back into her chair, pale and shaking. For once, she had no script, no manipulation, no way out. The weeks that followed were brutal. She called me daily, screaming, begging, bargaining. One night, she stood outside my house pounding on the door, shouting that I'd stolen her life. But I didn't let her in. I didn't give in. I loved my father. And keeping his promise meant respecting his final decision, no matter how ugly it made things between my mother and me. In the end, she tried to contest the will, but the lawyer shut it down. Dad had been lucid, the documents airtight. She lost. Now, I live in the house my father left me. Every creak of the floorboards, every photo on the walls, reminds me of him. Of his quiet strength. Of his final act of defiance against a woman who wanted to control everything. My mother and I barely speak now. When we do, it's cold, clipped, and full of resentment. Sometimes I wonder if I've lost her for good. But then I remember the look in her eyes when she realized she couldn't rewrite history. For once, the truth won. And yet, even with the house, even with the will validated, I can't shake the heaviness. Because this wasn't a victory. It was survival. I didn't just lose my father. I lost my mother, too. And I don't know if I'll ever get either of them back.
Follow me for more stories.